these animals, it's likely one of them may have been sick, and they would strand together as a group.
4 dead dolphins discovered this week washed up on Petit Bois Island. The Institute for Marine Mammal Studies is now looking into why and how it happened.
And this stranding comes on the heels of what IMMS calls the continued impact of the Bonnet Carre Spillwa openings from back in 2019 on marine life in the Sound and in the Gulf of Mexico. And here to talk about it is IMMS Director Dr. Moby Solangi. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll start with the dolphins. We were talking in the break, and it's something we don't see a lot, but you've seen it before. Kind of get us to this point where those dolphins had to beach themselves.
Well, these are deep water animals. They're not seen in the Mississippi Sound. They live in large groups. They're called the pantropical spotted dolphins. And when an animal does strand, it indicates there's trouble, either trouble amongst themselves, some disease process, or there's been some sort of environmental distress.
So what this was, as I understood, this was rare to have 4 dolphins like this, especially this time of year. And you think it might have been some sort of a disease that these dolphins were impacted by some kind of a disease or virus?
It's quite possible. We just did the necropsies. That means it's like an autopsy for a human. We are working with the pathologists from Mississippi State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And it's like a forensic study. These animals come like a black box. You've got to peel the onion and try to figure out. But what happens with marine mammals being on top of the food chain, they're a good biological indicator of what's happening in the ecosystem. And when they start dying, there's something to worry about.
So this could potentially be the beginning of something down the road with them, like you said, being at the top of the food chain. There could be some kind of domino effect, perhaps, right?
It quite is. That's one of the things that we've been able to predict. With our dolphins, we were able to predict that when the dolphins started dying, we started seeing the oysters, the blue crab, the shrimp. And so there was the entire ecosystem that supports the top predator is very important. And so when the top predator cannot survive, that means everything that was supporting is gone. And these animals, it would have taken them a very long time. There were 100 more miles south from here. And for them to have come in this far, not just 1 or 2 or 4 of them, so I'm sure some of them didn't make it.
A sign of a problem in very deep waters of the Gulf out there. Now we're still talking about the Bonnet Carre Spillway opening now 5 years later. There are signs that things are getting better. We did have the opening of the oyster season, but how much progress were we making, and what are still our concerns right now 5 years later?
Yeah, I think it's the water quality. The whole issue was that you have these 31 states and 2 provinces in Canada sending their agriculture, industrial, and sewage waste. And so it's not just fresh water. So all these pollutants, when they come into, especially Mississippi, which is not connected to the Mississippi River, it's not an indigenous river. And when you redirect something to it in large volumes, you're going to have trouble. And so it's going to take time for our ecosystem to recover. And the long-lived species take longer time. Short-lived species will jump back.
And I know you and the Save Our Sound Coalition have been working hard, not only with the Bonnet Carre, but also just the regular flow of the Mississippi. As you mentioned, all that agriculture, those chemicals, all that collects in the Mississippi, comes down and filters out in the Delta. And where does it go next? Well, our sound is right there. So that's a big deal. My question, though, was I've noticed lately the salinity has been up really high, 22. Is that normal? Because it's one of those I look over and usually it's 10 to 15. Does that signal anything?
No, I think it's a good sign. We have an estuarine environment, it fluctuates. But our biggest problem is that Louisiana is thinking of opening up another diversion, which is the Mid-Britain.
Right, the Mid-Britain.
And that water also comes in this direction. It's my understanding that Louisiana is having second thoughts about the $3 or $4 billion mid-Barataria, which would have wiped out everything.
Right, and so that would be a good sign in terms of keeping the volatility of the Mississippi Sound healthy. And what do you think?
I think the Mississippi Sound Coalition is doing an excellent work, and I think it should be promoted because we need legislation, we need the folks in Washington and everybody to understand that we don't have a voice in this, and it's affecting us economically, and socially.
Real quick, what do you think about the roach being sunk this week? We're seeing more of these reefs going down, but this is a fun way to highlight the issue.
I think it's a great thing. More reefs, more fish, more habitat.
All right, Moby Solangi with IMMS. Thanks for joining us once again. Always good to see you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Great.